Can I give you a formal beginning? Aomakua aloha mahalo. E ho mai kai. Ke hale. Me ke a mon. Mama. Blessed be this place and all of these people gathered here. My name is Serge Kahili King, and I represent an organization called Aloha International, and it makes these presentations. But we'd like to begin with a blessing, and so we're going to have one of our staff do that. Please. This is Lois. Lois is a teacher of a special art system called Zen Tango that you might want to ask her about afterwards.
Thank you. I think I'm going to share with you today a very short thing that you can do when you're under a lot of stress and when you need to brighten your life and make it happier. And it's very simple, and we'll do it together. The first part is only 3 steps. Well, 4. The first part is to breathe. So inhale with your focus at the crown of your head. Exhale with your focus at your navel. And one more time, breathe in, breathe out, and again. Now next is to relax. Let go of the tension in your body. Let go of the past and the fears, worries, and the future fears. Just let it go. And number 3 is to smile. Put a smile on your face or in your heart. Very simple. Breathe, relax, and smile. The 4th one is to appreciate. To put some gratitude and appreciation of everything that you can, whether it's just being here today or seeing a sunrise or enjoying a flower, being grateful for the present moment that we have. So breathe, relax, smile, and appreciate. Mahalo.
Mahalo. She just gave my talk. Real All right. We like to start off with a legend related to the topic. The legend we're going to do today is the legend of Aukele. So it begins like this. Ikawa kahiko, mamualoa o kapena kuke. Once upon a time, long before Captain Cook, in a land that no longer can be found. We don't know anything about this land anymore, but it's Kuwai Helani was the land. And there lived a great chief, and they had 12 children. You'll often find this in some of the Hawaiian stories. This represents some great power, of course, of the chief or whoever it is. But in this particular case, the first 11, the chief didn't pay much attention to, for whatever reason. Didn't talk to them much, didn't do much, let them go their own way. But when the 12th one was born, the 12th child was Aukele. And so they, boy, he just had a whole different feeling about this kid, and he held him in his arms, and he showered him with gifts, and he promised him all kinds of things when he grew up. Well, this was all well and good. Aukele was very happy, but his brothers weren't. And they got very jealous, especially the eldest one. So when Aukele had grown up into a nice young man and handsome and skilled and all of these kinds of, all the favors of his father, why, the eldest got all the other brothers together and they lured Aukele out to some place in the forest where there was this great pit, and then they grabbed him and threw him in. Very interesting at this point, because up to now, that part sounds an awful like the story of Joseph in the Bible. But then it goes Hawaiian. Because in this pit lived a dragon. A great, great dragon. Kamo'oinanea was the name of this dragon. A lot of the dragon stories, or the dragons themselves in Hawaiian legends, are female. And there are lots of different stories about that in the past as well. But they threw in, and as they threw him in, Aukele, as they threw him in, the eldest son shouted up, "Here's food for you," because this is where they used to throw the criminals and and the outcasts and things like that, and the dragon would eat them up. But there was the next youngest to Aukele. He had a kind heart, at least so-so. And because what he says, grandmother, he said, shouted down to the dragon, this is your grandson. And so she heard both boys. And so when Aukele fell in the pit and he greeted her as his grandmother, well then she took pity on him and began to do some good things for him. First thing she did was she looked at him for a long time, right straight in the eye. And then she showed him a secret tunnel that led from the pit all the way out to the ocean, to the seashore. And she showed him across, and she says, across that great ocean, a long, long way away, there's a land. The land is Kala Ke'e Nui Akane. And you must go to that land. And there in that land, you'll become wise, and you'll become rich, and you'll become a great chief. But also on that land lives a very dangerous chiefess. Okay? Sometimes they call it a queen, but they didn't really have queens in that idea. So what was a powerful chiefess? The Hawaiians had, the women had a great deal of equality in the ancient society, so that it would be just as easy for a woman to be a chief of a land as it would be for a man. And there were women warriors when they felt like it. And anyway, so this was a powerful chiefess, but she was also very dangerous. So the grandmother gave Aukele some magic items to help him on this journey, and help him on this quest, actually. One was a magic calabash that could give him secret knowledge. One was a magic leaf. And all he had, if he was hungry and thirsty, all he had to do was touch it to his lips, and he'd be filled. And the third one was a magic skirt. A very curious thing about a lot of the Hawaiian legends. They have this idea of magical items, fine, that's not a problem, but very often there's magic in the skirt. And even in one of the famous stories of Hi'iaka, who was the sister of Pele, why she is given a magic skirt that shoots out lightning. And they're often used as weapons for some reason. So anyway, she gave him a magic skirt that would destroy his enemies. So he goes off, he goes back to his family. Now he's kind of mixed up. He's kind of sad because he's going to have to leave his family. He's kind of happy, and he's going to have to face danger, but he's kind of happy because his grandmother gave him these powerful gifts to do it with. And so, he just kind of goes back and forth with this. He goes back to the family, makes peace with his brothers, tells his father what the grandmother said. So his father gives them a big canoe, a sailing canoe. And so they all get together and sail off for this distant land. It's a very long journey. And they just sail and sail and sail. They filled the boat with supplies, but gradually, they ran out of food, they ran out of water, and they're sailing along, and they're getting close to dying when suddenly Aukele has a dream, and in the dream he remembers the leaf that his grandmother gave him. So he puts it to his own lips, and then he does all of his brothers, and they all come back healthy and hearty again. By the way, I'm telling this in a very, very modern abbreviated version because there's so much stuff went on that we could make this a day-long or a night-long thing if we wanted to. So anyways, there they go, and they're all ready to go again, and they finally, at long last, there's the distant shore. Now, Aukele has secret knowledge from his magic calabash. So when he sees 4 birds flying out from the ocean, from the land, he knows immediately that those are 4 brothers of the name of the dangerous chiefess is Namaka'okahai. And he knows that they are her brothers. And he says to his own brothers, he says, look, when these birds fly over, if they ask us why we've come, you've got to say we're coming in peace. And the brothers laughed at him. Said, what do you know? You're so young. So when the birds came and asked why they had come to the island, the brothers said, "We are a war canoe." Okay, because, you know, that makes them feel real macho. And they didn't have the word macho, but they had the consonant. Okay. So here they go, and they continue to sail in. Well, Namaka o Kahai, when the brothers come back and they tell her this knowledge, wow, she comes down puts on her war skirt. That's in the story. Puts on her war skirt and she comes on and she's carrying a kahili. Now, almost any object could be a magical object in old Hawaii. A kahili is a staff. If you ever see something like the Merry Monarch and you see the pictures of the old kings and queens, there's usually this long pole and it's got these feathers sticking out of it. Okay? Look kind of like a dust mop. And, but it's a representation of royalty. Well, they had all kinds of different sizes. Originally, it was a fly whisk. And then, as it became more and more a symbol of the aristocracy, they just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But she had one that she could hold in her hand. And Namaka o Kahai had power over the ocean. And so down on the shore, and here comes the canoe, and Kahili knows what's going to happen, so he takes all his stuff and dives overboard. Tries to warn the brothers, they don't pay any attention. And so she shakes her kahili, and here come the waves. And the waves come over from all different directions, and they swamp the boat, and down it goes. Okay? So finally, Kahili makes it to shore. And when he makes it to shore, well, of course, the chiefess wants to destroy him as well. And so first she sends the birds, and with all his magic, especially with his knowledge of the calabash, why the birds don't bother him. So then she has a great big magic dog, and she sends the dog down to devour him. And so he uses a magic skirt and destroys the dog. And finally, Namaka o Kahai realizes that this guy is powerful. He's just as powerful as I am. He says, so I'm better make peace with it. So after a while of negotiations, well, she did make peace. And not only made peace, but, you know, power loves power. So they got married, and they became, you know, a power with her dangerous ways, his peaceful ways, kind of creating a mutual situation. So that went on for a while. And after they were married, then there's a lot more that happened. There's a whole story of how Kahili, all the adventures that he went on, and all the things that he did to save his brothers, and bring them back from under the ocean and back to life. But that's a tale for another telling. Ikihola kika'au, so goes the story. Okay? So now we get into the topic. The topic for today is the secret of happiness. Now, you've probably heard all kinds of things during your life about this. You just heard a real good bit at the beginning with your blessing. But I'm going to see if I can give you some different approaches, some different ideas about this whole thing. A long time ago, I attended a conference. It was actually in Colorado. And where I was teaching. And there were other teachers there. And we were allowed to go to each other's teachings, but, you know, there wasn't always time because we'd be teaching when they were teaching. There was one guy I thought was intriguing. He was a Frenchman. He was teaching about happiness. I don't remember his name. I don't remember the name of his topic. But one evening I had free, and he was giving a lecture, just sort of to summarize what he had been teaching, because he already gave the workshop. And so I went and listened. Now, basically, his basic idea was that happiness is a choice. And so he was teaching that whatever the situation, you can choose to be happy. Well, people from the audience started coming up with questions. There was a question that said, well, if I've lost my job, how can I be happy? And he's standing up there, nice and calm, with a smile on his face, and says, be happy. Then another woman says, what if you've lost a child? How can you be happy? And he just looked at her and smiled and said, be happy. Well, this kind of was getting the audience frustrated because he wasn't teaching anything about how to make that shift. Now, maybe he did in his workshop, I don't know, but he didn't do it in the lecture. And so people didn't know what to do. So I decided to take that idea and share with you some ideas about happiness and some things that you can do if you want to be more happy more of the time. Okay? So, first of all, like anything else, happiness is what you think it is. And what that gives us is the idea that happiness itself implies that there's some degree of pleasure involved, but some degree. So there's happy and happy. It all depends. Let's say on a minimum, way at the bottom end of the scale, you've got two choices, or someone has two choices to make, and they don't like either one particularly, but finally they'll say, well, okay, I can be happy with that one. That's kind of a real low degree of happiness, but it's there. And then there's the other one where something has happened, maybe a wish has been fulfilled, or a great task has been accomplished, and someone will say, I'm so happy I could burst. And that's a kind of a high degree of the same thing. We use the same term for that. So we understand that there are different degrees of this. So, it doesn't have to be the same kind of an experience for everyone all the time. You can have the same degrees or different degrees in your own life in different situations and circumstances. We can look at the same thing one way and feel unhappy, and we can look at the same thing another way and feel happy. A simple example would be something like what happened to Kahili. You can have something that has bad aspects and good aspects, and you say, well, that part was bad, but that part was good. I'm unhappy about that, but I can be happy about that. Someone loses their home to Pele's flow, and they can say, well, I'm sad that I lost my home, but I'm happy no one was hurt. That kind of a thing we can relate to. Another example would be when someone changes their interpretation of something. I remember a situation a long time ago when a man was talking with a therapist, and he was really upset, really unhappy because his daughter was so stubborn. It was a very wise therapist, because the therapist said, you mean she can say no when some guy wants her to go to bed with him? And the man, the father stopped for a moment. Yeah, that's good. Okay. A different interpretation of exactly the same thing. That can change how we feel about it. Okay? It's also good to realize that the only time we can be happy, or even unhappy, is right now. We can't be happy in the past, because that's over. We can be happy about the past, because memories exist right now. Okay? So we can think about a current memory that we have stored and be happy about that, but we're still being happy in the present. Also, we can't be happy in the future, because it doesn't exist yet. We can be happy about an expectation we have about the future, okay? And that works, because expectations also exist right now. But the happiness experience can only happen right now. That's important to understand. Now there's different kinds, you could be happy and unhappy in the same way. What I want to say here is, when your memories and expectations and present awareness are conditioned by fear and anger and regret, sorrow, grief, resentment, or, it's easy to feel unhappy. But when they're conditioned by confidence, by hope, by appreciation, by caring, then you can feel happy. So it's the framework in which we're putting stuff that makes such a big difference. Now there's different kinds of happiness. Well, what I mean by that is we can have different reasons for being happy or unhappy. And instead of going into all the hundreds of different reasons that are possible, maybe thousands, I'm just going to put them into 4 categories to make it easy to understand. One kind of happiness comes from pure sensory experience. Sight, sound, touch, taste, all these kinds of things. When they please us, we can feel happy. Exactly. What pleases us, of course, can be different for different people at different times too, but sensory pleasure is one of the forms of happiness. Another kind comes from what I call resolution. This is the pleasure of winning a game, solving a problem, finishing a project, accomplishing a task, having our curiosity satisfied, or reaching what we believe is an understanding of something. Oh, that feels so good. And so that's a kind of pleasure that we can have from any of those kinds of things, when something resolves itself. The third kind of happiness comes from the experience of harmony. It comes from, it comes from when 2 or more things flow together nicely. You can think of an orchestra, if you want to, or 2 people singing in harmony. Or any other thing that flows and comes together nicely. Not necessarily a resolution, but that harmonious experience. Beauty falls into this category. But the interesting thing about this is a learned experience. What we consider beautiful is learned, because that varies from culture to culture. If you've ever watched a group of Chinese people listening to Chinese opera, you know there had to be something learned, because it doesn't sound the same to us at all. But on the other hand, when we listen to something like one of the old tunes that we grew up with, that makes us feel good, you can see them scratching their heads. And what do they get out of that? These are learned things. Even the visual beauty that we see. I remember one time I had my youngest son in my arms. He was very young, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And there was a sunset. We were on the beach, and I pointed out the sunset. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? And he just looked at it like, you know, what's that? No reaction. And I realized that he really didn't have a concept of what beautiful meant. So I talked for a while, I told him to focus on how the colors went together, and how they looked so pretty with each other, and how they complemented the reflections in the ocean, and the shape of the clouds. And next time we went to the beach, he pointed out, look, Dad, there's a beautiful sunset. Okay? But it wasn't something that came completely naturally. He had to learn it, what we consider beautiful. So there's a 4th kind. The 4th kind is our happiness at other people's happiness. Okay? In English, we call this a vicarious experience, and it's considered to be having something to do with the imagination, that we're imagining ourselves as having that. No, it doesn't. The way we look at it in this knowledge, this teaching that I'm doing, is an actual shared feeling. And it's that shared feeling that helps us be happy about it, okay? Not just what we imagine it to be. And so this is a 4th kind of source of happiness. Now, beyond this, understanding these forms, there's what I call reactive happiness and proactive happiness. What the young Frenchman was teaching that I talked about earlier, he was trying to teach proactive happiness, making the choice, making the decision to do it. And this is not real common in our society, not in very many societies, okay, to do this kind of thing. The beauty thing is an example of proactive, where we can find out more about something and decide to see the beauty in it. I can remember one time when I was experimenting with this. And I was sitting in of all places, I was sitting in a place called Santa Monica Mall in Southern California. And on the table in front of me were 2 discarded paper cups that somebody had left from drinking something. And they're just lying down on the table. So I decided to look at them in terms of their relationship to each other, and then in terms of their relationship to the table and to the environment. And I just went with this, and I'm in a state of bliss in about 10 minutes, because I'm just tuning into all of this connectedness. But I could only do it as a choice. It wasn't something I automatically saw. And we can choose to look at something differently and seek the beauty in it, no matter what it might be described as. Okay? That's proactive. Reactive, of course, is waiting for something to happen that you like. This is probably, when I make a guess, this is probably what most people do. They're waiting until it arrives, and then they allow themselves to be happy because it happened to them. Okay? And we don't have to wait for that. If we make that shift, when we find ourselves dwelling on unhappy memories, then we start to feel unhappy. When we dwell on happy memories, we automatically start feeling happy. Into something that doesn't. Okay? I remember one guy came into my office, became a good friend, but when he first came into my office, the first thing he said was, he came in holding his pulse, and he says, "What if my heart stops?" And he'd been having all kinds of problems, and nobody could help him. What if my heart stops? He was just locked into this. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I said, "What if it doesn't?" He said, "Hey, yeah, thanks," and walked out. He later came back, and we had a great relationship, but it was just that little shift. Okay? Anytime you're thinking about, oh, what if this terrible thing happens, all you have to do is, wait a minute, well, what if something good happens instead? And dwell on that, because, got to be fair. You give that equal possibility, and you're going to find yourself feeling better. It happens naturally. There are a lot of things in the world right now that we can dislike. The more we dislike them, the more unhappy we feel. There's also a lot of things that are good. That people helping people. One of the first things I notice when I see, disaster, that they show earthquakes or storms and hurricanes and whatever it might be that's happening, and they show it on television. First thing I look for are the people who are helping. And there's always people helping. And of course, it's almost always locals first who are helping other people, even if they don't know them. That's a happy thing. That's a good thing. That gives me a sense of happiness, not about the disaster, but in the disaster. That there is that kind of love and caring that goes on. And it happens immediately. People don't even have to sit and think about it. Some people do, but the ones who are immediately there immediately rush into help. And that's a great thing. We have the power to be happy. For whoever won in a game, for those not affected by the lava, for those who benefit from anything else, we have the power to choose to look at that and be happy about it. Now, it's a simple thing to do. So there's a surefire technique. That doesn't come easy doing that necessarily, and that's mainly because of habit. But there is a simple, easy way to do, a thing to do. To be happier more often. All you have to do is take 1 minute. You can take more if you want to. 1 minute. Maybe once a day, more often if you want to. And in that small bit of time, wish happiness for others. Wish, pray, imagine, program, however that works for you. To just take 1 minute out in some way to want others to be happy. And just think of that. You don't even have to think about how it's going to happen, because we don't always know. But we can think of them being happy and hoping that they will be that way as much as possible. That's going to help you feel better. The more often you do it, the more often you feel better. We're not talking about trying to be happy all the time. I don't think that's practical on my own self. A lot of things I instantly don't like, but then I do something about it. But you can be happy far more often if you want to. And when you're happier, your mind is clearer, your body responds to that, so you become healthier. And I know people who have healed themselves of different forms of cancer by just meditating on beauty. But you will become more healthy by dwelling on that more often. And your relationships will improve. And better stuff will happen to you. Okay? Curiously enough, because you'll start to affect your environment. You can try this sometime. Get yourself in a good mood in the morning. Walk out with a smile, and smile at as many people as you can. Okay? But just try to feel good. And you watch the responses of the people in your life. From bank tellers to strangers on the street to people will respond. Not everybody, some people are just too locked into their own bad stuff. But the amount of response, if you've not done this before, will be surprising and delightful. Okay. Finally, I'll give you one more thing. Well, actually, I got two more things, but this is the main one thing. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the song, she actually quoted it, "Put on a Happy Face." It's actually a song, and was one of the very popular ones. Here's the first verse. I'm not going to try and sing it. Gray skies are going to clear up. Put on a happy face. Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. It sounds kind of, oh, that's goody-goody stuff, but actually this has been well known by actors from the time acting ever began. That no matter what emotion you want to feel, you practice the facial expression that goes with it. And in moments you'll be feeling that emotion. That's how the really good actors can have instant tears. Some of them dwell on a memory, but if you really know how to do the facial expressions, you don't even have to do that. The body will respond to the facial expression that you're holding on your face. And it works the other way too. The last verse of that same song. I knew a girl so blooming, she'd never laugh or sing. She wouldn't listen to me. Now she's a mean old thing. For the finish, we'll end with a really Hawaiian look at this. It's a Hawaiian technique you could think of based on this proverb. Ilaila ilua kahai mehiku. The translation is, spend the time enjoyably with Hiku. Now in legend, Hiku was a happy-go-lucky hero. And so what the proverb is really saying, if you really want to be happy, hang out with happy people. Pau ka'olelo. The tale is told. Do you have any comments or questions? Yes?
Is there a kind of happiness that is not externally motivated at all? It's just...
Well, that's my point here. See, if you mean facial expression, you don't have to be looking in the mirror when you do that.
Right.
Therefore, it's internal. If you're dwelling on a memory, that's internal. In case the question wasn't heard, is there a kind of happiness that is not externally motivated? Sure. So it can be your memories, it can be your expectations, it can be being in the happy field of a group of people, and it's not externally motivated because you are reacting to it. Okay? So you don't have to have a reason to be happy. That's the main thing. Yes. And that's what we're trying to get across. Anything else? No, so good. That tried to. Yes, Angel.
Well, Anu, would you share with us your ball that you shared with us earlier?
Okay, yes, this is good.
The really neat idea.
So I came here and I told Dr. King that I actually came here to teach the class instead of him because I found the secret to happiness. This is how you do it, people. It always gets me like I leave it in my apartment and I pick it up and I start playing with it, and it immediately gets me out of the loop that I was in. So thank you for reminding me. It's really fun.
That's a beautiful example, and it goes along with that resolution kind of happiness that I was talking about. As long as you catch the ball, you feel good.
That's true.
That's true.
If I was bouncing all over the room, I'd be pulling my hair out.
So that's a beautiful example of that kind of happiness. Yes. We don't have to stick to the same topic if there's other aspects of Hawaiian culture or this knowledge we teach that we call Huna that are of interest to you. Yes?
Well, when I was thinking about the topic, I started to sing this song called Happy Talk from South Pacific.
I'm glad you brought that up. There are so many good happy songs. And it would be a neat idea to get a collection of those and sing them. Okay? Whenever you're starting to feel blue, start singing. There are so many songs that are about happiness and how to be happy and the whole. One of my favorite, that's a good one, Happy Talk from South Pacific. And another really good one I like is, I'm not sure of the title, but these are a few of my favorite things from Sound of Music. I always smile and feel good whenever I'm hearing that, and then I can use that. And it goes along with the old idea of count your blessings. Okay? And that's what she's doing in that song. These are a few of them, brown paper packages tied up with string. They make her feel good. Okay? There's a promise of a gift inside or something interesting. But there are so many of these things. Do you remember the song a while back that came out? It was very, very popular, and it became almost, like a saying that everybody said all over the country, in this country. And it was, a song that was, don't worry, be happy. That became so popular. It's still a good idea. You don't hear the song often very much, and a lot of these you don't hear played very much. There's an awful lot of unhappy songs out there being sung too. But if you pay attention, you can find the happy ones, and they are an excellent kind of reminder or a way of getting you into a mood or changing the mood.
Accentuate the positive.
Accentuate the positive. Oh yeah, I remember that one. They used to play that on the radio when I was a kid. Long time ago. Yes?
In not so ancient history, the thing that I encountered in some of my classes is I was asked the whole group, how important is happiness to you? And some people will say it's very, very important, and other people, in fact, some people will say it's the most important, and others will say, well, it's not that important to me. I'm curious what you would say to those for whom happiness is not especially important.
Okay. Part of the problem has to do with interpreting the word happiness. It means, remember I said, happiness is what you think it is? And it means certain things to certain people. For some people it just means feeling good for no reason at all, which that's not logical to them. Others, it's a feeling state that they don't feel very often, especially if they're in the reactive kind of happiness. But everybody seeks pleasure. And some people don't equate, because there are differences, some people don't equate all pleasure to the state of happiness. There are different kinds of pleasure. The two primary forms of pleasure, even beyond primary, fundamental, are the urge toward feeling powerful, or effective, if you want to use that term, and the urge toward feeling loved or connected. These are fundamental urges that all human beings have. And we get pleasure when we get those experiences. And they're of such a nature that not everybody would call that kind of pleasure happiness. Okay? But it feels good. And so that would be my response to that. There's things that they want that are pleasurable to them, but they have some kind of idea in mind of what happy means. Yes.
Following up a little on that, Stuart, this happiness thing is embedded in the pursuit of happiness, right? Within the American framework. How does it work culturally? Because it doesn't seem quite as global. I'm talking about a Buddhist perspective, frankly, where there are many interpretations of life as suffering, but then the more, I would say, reasonable and reasoned response is that there is suffering in life, and that this constant pursuit of happiness is a kind of craving and it's run a totally different system. So it's really, this is an interesting thing. So I mean, I understand that, and happiness is different things to different people. It's got this Disneyland
That's the whole
feel.
thing. Happiness is different things.
That's
You know,
that other song.
we get this idea in the Declaration of Independence of the United States. One of the statements is everybody has a right to the pursuit of happiness, whatever that is for them. That's what the implication is. Okay? Not that it's a specific state or a specific thing, but they have the right to try and feel better. And that's the kind of idea. But then when we come in from a different culture with a different idea of what happiness is, it can be interpreted as, well, this is just a meaningless, materialistic way of looking at things, when spirituality is far better, and spirituality in some cultures and some philosophies does not include happiness. Okay? So it's a tricky thing to talk about, okay? Which is why I tried to give some perspectives on it that are a little different.
There is a Buddhist named Matthew Richard, also a Frenchman, who wrote a book called Happiness.
Oh.
And they called him the happiest man in the world because they did something where they started, they hooked up diodes to their heads as they went into meditative states and found out that they were able to achieve happiness. And they realized a very interesting thing, that they would show people a bunch of images, some of them of beautiful and pleasant things, and then occasionally there would be an image of, say, a burn victim or something like that. And people who did not have a Buddhist practice or were not practicing
This particular viewpoint.
would respond with recoil and horror
Sure.
at, oh my God. The people who were the Buddhist practitioners who had been practicing compassion actually responded with compassion, and their right frontal lobe would light up, and it didn't cause
It's a different,
happiness.
it's
They
a-
were actually calm,
this is proactive. And maybe that was the Frenchman who was at the workshop.
They probably
Okay? Okay?
He's a
But
great
see,
photographer too.
that's proactive happiness. That we can purposely put ourselves into a state in which, like I said, when we look at a disaster, we can immediately focus on the helpers and the helping, okay? Which is a type of thing. It doesn't have to be limited to Buddhism.
Yeah.
But there are Buddhist practices which focus on that, which is a good thing.
Well, you're seeing the intrinsic and natural compassion that
Yes.
arises in all of you.
That's right, it's a human thing. And it's like with, sometimes there seem to be such fantastic powers that people have. They're human things. Some people practice them. And that's the only difference I can tell you from many, many years of teaching. All the kinds of skills that people have, and the powers, and the psychic powers, and the clairvoyance, and the healing with the hands, anybody can do that if they're willing to practice. Okay? For some it'll be a little easier than others, but it's human. Yes. And it's good, though, that some people come up with ways and means to make that practice more effective. Yeah. Good. Okay, let's take a moment here. This is a free meeting. I hope you all enjoy it. At the same time, as a nonprofit organization, we have some projects that you may or may not be interested in. One of them is a we send out healing techniques, very powerful ones. One of them having to do primarily with love and blessing. But we send them out free in little booklets to anybody, anywhere in the world, single copies. And we also have them in about, I can't remember, at least 25 different languages for free download on the internet. Okay, so anybody can have access to these anywhere. And we had, in fact, if you didn't get one and you came in, the pink booklet and the blue booklet that are back there on the table, feel free to take one of each and try them out. They're really incredible. So that's one of the things we do. We have a website where we have over 300 articles, free access about this knowledge, about all kinds of things about this knowledge that different people in our organization have written, and immense amount of terrific knowledge there. We also have ideas, we have techniques, we have a lot of free counseling and free distant healing. If any of that interests you in helping us do it, why, I'm going to pass the calabash around. Thank you. Also, we're going to finish this session with kind of like a healing session. To do that, we have these pieces of nature that have come from all around the world that people have put in the basket, and we use these. We take one out, we hold it, we have somebody guide you through a process where you can use it to help yourself or to help other people you care about. So, go and grab one. When I pass it around, just let the object choose you. And you don't have to sit and meditate on which is the right one. Okay? If we think they're alive, aware, and responsive. So while that's going around, if there are any more questions? Yes?
Back to what Stuart was talking about, some people that don't really think happiness is that important. Didn't the Hawaiians have proverbs that said that love is the thing that heals, or happiness, the quality of love? I mean, happiness is a big part of love in the definition of the word, so that's what heals. That's what's bringing life to our bodies. And
Well, of course, and they practiced it a lot. One of the curious things in the days of the plantation, when they were being run by Americans and Europeans, why first they were trying to get the Hawaiians to work on the plantation. Hawaiians didn't have any problem with that. Hawaiians were very hard workers, but they weren't crazy. So they come to the plantation, and they get all the work done in the morning, and then go fish and swim and play and party for the rest of the day. Well, that drove the supervisors crazy. They wanted them to be there from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And Hawaii just couldn't see the point. Okay? What's the point of being there? The point is get the work done. Okay? And then party. Okay? So that's why they brought in Chinese first, and then Japanese and Koreans and Filipinos, because they had a work ethic that was more compatible with the people who were running the plantations. So, some of the Hawaiians still did it, but as a culture, the point was, do the work, work hard, finish it. In fact, today, the word for happy hour here in the islands is called Huna, work done. Okay? So, that's a different viewpoint. Anything else? Everybody got your thing? Okay. Stuart, would you please?
Sure.
Stuart teaches this knowledge down in Kalapana. He'll probably talk a little bit about that after. I just wanted to let you know he's also a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha, everybody. Aloha. And everybody does have one, right? Yes. Okay. So I invite you to look at it. And look it over and find something that pleases you about what you have in your hand. Just something to enjoy, something that makes you feel a little bit good, something that you enjoy, perhaps something fun about it, or some particularly beautiful aspect of it. Something that makes you feel good. And then I invite you to think about some memory that you have that also makes you feel good. Something that you remember, perhaps with someone, or something that you did, or something that you accomplished, or some time when you were observing very special beauty. But find that memory, find that thought, and focus in on it. And one of the things about happiness, of course, is that, as Serge was saying, that it takes practice. And if you want to feel good, then practice feeling good. So I invite you to savor this memory of yours. Savor the feelings of this memory. Let the memory itself help you focus on the feeling, but it is the feeling that is the important part. So let's take a moment and just be with ourselves as we remember something that made us happy, and remember the feeling, and just take some time to savor, to spend time with that delicious feeling. And do you find yourself feeling happier? Then let's do a little bit of healing. Think of someone who probably isn't as happy as you that you know. Somebody that you would love to see be even happier than they are. And in your mind's eye, hug them and let them resonate with your happiness. And in this way you can help heal them. You're not forcing anything on them, you're inviting them to join you in happiness. And see how much you can amplify your own happiness as you hug them. And maybe you want to hug more than one person. But enjoy the act of sharing your happiness. Savor the joy. Savor the love. And savor the love that you have for yourself as you do this. Time is pleasure's best friend. So spending time with your pleasures, spending time with your happiness, will only help it grow. Come on back when you're ready. And before you put your little piece of nature back in the basket, give it a little of your life breath. Give it a little of your happiness. Thank you.
Mahalo. Okay. Now we're going to pick up the bits of nature. Coming around, and as soon as while those are happening, do we have any announcements? Anything happening anybody wants to share? Stuart.
As it happens, I teach a weekly class in Huna called the Huna Healing Circle at the Kalani Oceanside Retreat down near Kalapana. 7:30 every Thursday. It goes on for about an hour and a half to nearly 2 hours, and you're all invited and welcome. And it's a fun thing. We take some subject of everyday life and look at it from a Huna point of view, and explore that. Usually we have a shamanic journey as a part of this, and it's a lot of fun. So please come if you have an opportunity. Also on the 22nd of this month, I will be doing a 3-hour class, also at Kalani, on healing the stories we tell ourselves. And as Serge was talking about earlier, very often we tell stories that make us feel miserable, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. So this will be about how we can change those stories. Also, I'll be doing a week-long workshop in December. Love Heals from Within, the great magic of Hawaiian shamanism down in Kalani, and that should be a lot of fun as well. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Yes?
As Serge mentioned, we teach an art form called Zen Tangle, and Zen Tangle is an easy and relaxing way of drawing repetitive patterns over and over and over and over again. It gets you into a relaxed state. And Saturday the 22nd, we'll both be very busy that day, we're going to be teaching a class where we're tangling is the word we use for drawing, on leaves. And we're going to use nature as a canvas. We'll be using the autograph tree leaves, eucalyptus, magnolia, we have some Bodhi tree leaves, and koa. And we take a bamboo needle to the autograph tree, and we etch into the leaf, and this beautiful golden liquid comes out in a wonderful aroma, and it then forms this, with the patterns that we teach, a beautiful image on the leaf. And with time, it's kind of like wabi-sabi, where there's beauty in the aging and in the change, and as the leaf changes its color, you get to absorb this beautiful image that produces itself. And then we, with the other leaves, we'll be using metallics to actually draw on the leaves that are already dried. And it's a wonderful art form. It does bring about, we just had one for class yesterday, and the happiness in the group afterward is really catchy. It's a lot of fun. So we have a few more seats left in the class. I'll leave the information here in the back, and you can sign up, and I could send you more information if you'd like it. Thank you.
Thank you. On this one, I just want to point out that when you put these repetitive patterns, very, very simple ones together, you find yourself creating a work of art. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Thank you. Okay.